So this is the Troy-Bilt 27-ton log splitter. I've had it for, I don't know, 7-8 years. It's been a great machine. It's got probably, I'm guessing 120, 130 hours on it. My hour meter shows like 52, but that's not quite right. I put it on after the fact. Anyways, it's been a great machine up until the other day. I noticed on the way back up, I would engage it, and it was really working the engine. It would go up, but it was working hard. Ended up finding if I held it, it would go up with no problem. So I kept going another quarter, half a quart or so, and then it got worse and worse and worse till the point where it wouldn't work at all in the upstring, or upstroke rather. It would keep popping back out. And even now, sometimes on the way down, if I pull all the way, it binds, so I have to let up just a little bit. So there's definitely some type of problem with the valve. I don't know whether it's just an alignment thing of the spool inside. Did a little reading, and it looks like this is the detent. So that's what actually controls this locking up position. This guy is catching that, and then when it sees an excess amount of pressure from the piston coming back in, it says, hey, you're done, release the stroke, and it pops back. So I'm thinking maybe something is wrong with that. I'm thinking maybe that's what controls the spring action of that too. I'm not positive. But we're going to pull it apart and see if we can find out. So one thing I've noticed too is come on, focus. There's a little bit of play right here. Yeah, where that spool goes in and out. And I'm not sure if that should be doing that or not. Never really looked at it before. It just worked, right? You know, I threw a log in there and off I went. So I'm going to start it up real quick, show you what it's doing, and we're going to pull it apart. Okay, first pull. Ready? Maybe. Let's see. Okay, I probably should have let the engine warm up a little more so you weren't confused with the cold running crappiness of the engine versus the bogging down from the fluid going in the wrong position. But clearly it's not working as it should. You know, it wants to knock out of neutral all the way down. It's binding, not moving the ram at all. Slightly up, it does. So there's definitely some issues. So I think what I'm going to do is crack this top nut with the unit in vertical mode, see if we can drain some fluid out of this entire setup here so we don't make a complete mess, and then maybe see if we can crack this top off. I'm hoping that I'm right and this is what controls the entire detent. I looked online, you can find these for about 50 bucks. Of course you can buy a whole new valve for about 60 or 70, 80 shipped, so that may end up being the answer too. So let's pull and see what happens. Okay, using a wrench that I didn't have, I loosened this nut up. I think it's around 7/8 or so. It's like the one wrench I don't have, so I used an adjustable. And I already tried this. I wasn't on camera, obviously, but so I believe when I lift it up, I'm going to put the microphone right next to the pipe fitting here. Usually, I don't know if you can hear that sucking noise, but we're in up mode and we're now sucking fluid. So my theory is right. I hope that this is draining back in up mode. Should be going through the valve and then out the return line back into the reservoir. So that got quiet, so I'm hoping that that drained. Gonna try doing the same thing on the downstroke and then maybe giving the ram a little bit of a tug just to create some headspace up at the top. I'm gonna have to set the camera down. I don't know if that's gonna work or not, but we'll see what happens. Yep, so with some convincing and the Whoa, yep, now we overflowed. Okay, let's go get a waste container. Hang on, be back. Oh, we had a little leak there. I captured most of it. I probably only dripped a tablespoon or so on the ground. So if my phone rings during the video, it's probably the EPA calling. Anyways, back to business here. What's next? I'm not so sure as we've gotten everything drained out. We may have to drain a little further, and if we do, that's gonna change how I do things. I was hoping that that reservoir would hold more than it did. Let's regroup here and think about this for a sec. Okay, so I found a redneck way of reducing some level here. Couldn't find any plastic containers because the recycling just went out, so used a gas can. Figured that should be good and clean, and whatever we rinse it out with afterwards will get a little extra lubrication in the fuel system. Anyways, if you do this, use a bigger tube than 1/4 inch. This is draining really slow, but that's okay. That's how we learn. So the other thing I'm thinking is I put a log there, so this won't go down anymore. So at least if I pry this off of here, I might be able to get it off without the ram sliding on its own down. I might get a little residual, but I'm hoping I don't get too much. So yeah, anyways. Alright, so I got the cover off. A couple Allen screws came right off. And I'm already thinking that that is what controls that actuation, because without that on there, this guy moves pretty free. I don't want to move it too much and have stuff fly apart, but the detent clicking is not happening anymore, so somehow that happens right up here in this top ball. I don't know if you can see down inside of there, probably not, but there's a little ball down in there. So I'm going to carefully see if I can pull that all apart, maybe see what the problem is with it. Like I said, you can buy that part, so maybe we'll just do that and see if it fixes it. So it looks like this thing is made up of a series of these balls right here on the side. There's 4 of those, and looks to me, we come over here to the rest of our parts, that these balls end up going into these, if I could get that to focus. There's little like rings inside of there, and they kind of snap in and out, it looks like. And there's a big spring there and a big ball that looks like it pushes down on the whole thing. So I'm seeing a little bit of, I wish I'd focus, there we go. Seeing the light there, there's some wear on that ring. I don't know if that's going to be sufficient to cause that much of an issue or not, but I'm going to keep pulling apart here and clean everything up and look, see if we can really get to the root of the problem. There is one more thing worth looking at down here with the light. Come on, focus. Darn things never focus on what you want. There we go. See that little plate that's going sideways? I don't know what that is. Why that's that way. We may have to look at a parts diagram too. Okay, I may have just had an aha moment here. So I was looking at the directions for this last night, I have to admit, and I found a rebuild kit, which basically you can rebuild the gasket here, and you can rebuild the gasket down here. There's a couple of screws, just like the top, drop that, this whole thing comes off. Anyways, that's not really important. The bottom line is this spool, I believe that's what they call it, this shaft that goes up and down that controls the flow of oil. This spool at the top, when they tell you to take this thing off, you basically unscrew this, the spool drops out, then you can replace your gasket there, you can replace your gasket there. They tell you to use a pretty beefy screwdriver, like a 3/4 to 7/8 or something, to get this off of here. So that would imply that that's on there pretty tight. I can turn it by hand. So I'm wondering, when I was running this thing the other day, it went downhill fast. I mean, it had worked, you know, what did I say, 120 hours probably on the machine. And then within 2 to 3 hours, it got to the point where it didn't work. So I'm wondering if this thing just came loose. And maybe that's the source of my problem. That's why this is not lining up the way it should, because this is now, the detent is out of alignment. So I'm going to go back in real quick and look at the directions I had and see if they recommend like putting Loctite or something on there. You know, if they do, then that would tell me for sure that that thing shouldn't come loose. I mean, I don't think it should be loose like that, because if I turn, you know, I'm imagining it's threading to the other end of the spool. So let's go take a look at those directions real quick. Yeah, there it is, step 18. Apply Loctite thread sealer or equivalent compound. Yep, okay. And let's see, yada, 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 70 to 90 inch-pounds. So, I think that could be a source of our problem. Let's pull that apart, clean it, and see if we can reassemble. Alright, I've got everything reasonably cleaned up here. One good note just to mention before you start any of this, clean the outside casing good. I did a reasonably good job of getting all the wood chips and stuff off, but you don't want any crud to get inside of here. So I'm going to go grab a can of carb or brake cleaner or something like that and just clean those threads up nice and squeaky clean. That way the Loctite will stick. And I've got a whole bucket of parts there, and I'll go through step by step as I try to figure them out, where they went. We'll reassemble everything and then we'll give it a whirl. Stay tuned. Alright, we're getting dangerously close to reassembly time. So this is kind of like the main doohickey that everything attaches to inside of there. It's got your thread at the bottom. That's what's going to thread onto the top of the valve itself. That guy sinks down inside of this doohickey here, which is a spring. There's a plate right there, and there's a plate right there on that side. So this whole assembly is going to sit down on top. At the way bottom, there's a lock washer there, so that's going to sit on top like that. Let's see here. And that collar, this guy here, it was kind of a, let's see, a pointy side to this. I'm not going to be able to focus. Well, anyways, there we go. There's a pointy side and a flat side. That's the flat side. Flat side was down, pointy side was up. Don't know if it makes any difference, but we're going to put it back the same way. That's going to go over like that. And then all the balls, we'll deal with those after. So let's see if we can get this part reassembled first. I originally grabbed the red thread locker, and then I thought better of it. I went back in and grabbed the blue. I don't think we really want red on there, just in case I end up having to do it again. Usually just a dab will do you. You don't need much on there. So I've got the bottom piece, the spring, the top piece, and then we're just threading it on. It's a nifty little crowbar, looks like it fits in there pretty well. I'm gonna have to move the light here a little bit though. Okay, that feels like where it wants to stop. Let's look at that torque spec again. I already forgot what it was. 70 to 90 inch-pounds, so I've got no way to measure that, but we're just gonna give it a good tight. This is just a shaft on a handle here, so I don't think I can really over tighten it. Okay, that's good enough. It's not going anymore. I think that's all we're gonna get out of it. Okay, directly in the top was this little dot. It's a piece of round aluminum. So see if we can get him back in the top. In he goes. Not really lined up. I gotta go get something to fix that. There he is, sitting down inside. There we go. Nice and flat now. Okay, next, this little collary piece. Go ahead and slide him on. And then this guy, important to note that the rings on this, there's kind of one in the center and there's one toward one of the ends. You want to have the top ring on the way up. So that's going to allow your shaft to come down inside of here click for neutral, and then when you push down on your rod, there's going to be nothing. Back up to neutral, and then up for that click to hold for the auto retract. So do it the other way around. I think it would be automatic down, which you don't want that. So since these balls have to go inside these little holes here, I'm going to apply a little bit of grease to kind of hold them in there. I don't think this whole system here gets pressurized or has fluid in it, so I don't think it's really going to matter just from looking when I pulled it apart. I know you don't want to get contaminants and stuff like that inside of the hydraulic fluid, but I think we're going to be okay here. I think I'd rather have a little bit of lubrication than risk wear and getting metal components in the system. So I know there's going to be somebody out there who knows more than me saying, no, don't do that, but I think I'm going to do it anyways. It'll certainly ease the installation. Why is it whenever you have a grease gun with a long hose, it always ends up right in your pant leg? There's one. I'll rinse and repeat that 3 other times. Okay, all 4 little bearings are back in. What you didn't see is the clip where I dropped one on the ground and spent 5 minutes looking for it. Anyways, they're all in, so we're going to see if we can slide this collar down over the top here. Hopefully they stay. I may have to move the camera because they may be in the way. Okay, very gently. Nobody moved. Look at that. Okay, sweet. So just for good measure, I greased up the top ball a little bit too. We're gonna drop him right down inside, like so. And let me give you a top view. Grease off my fingers. So in the end, I believe that's what it should look like. Now there's another spring somewhere. Aha, here it is. I think that just sits right on the top. So let's try it, see what happens. Okay, rest should be pretty self-explanatory here. Screw there, one on the other side, put those down, and hopefully we're gonna be good. Okay, turns out I was wrong. I'm remembering now that the spring was down in the center part, and I'm assuming the ball has to go in the top, but it can't get there because the little balls are there, so I think we actually have to unthread that, take it back off. Maybe. That's why you shouldn't do this stuff when you first wake up. Alright, take 2. I took the whole thing back apart again, went into the basement because I didn't want to risk losing these balls, and that was the way to do it. So I chucked this piece in the vise, and the ball is now down inside of there with the spring pushing up on it. So this sits in this way. Best thing I found was a little nut driver. You put this outer sleeve on the outside of the nut driver, and then, you know, all in one motion, push that ball down and then slide the collar over. And I've got it in the neutral position right now. But I think that's the way it goes. Of course, I thought that was the way it went the other way, and it wasn't. So let's try it. This is already seeming more logical. Okay, so when I lift up on this, that's the reverse position. In theory, the cap would be pushing down on that. It's going to push those balls up into that top ring. So this is looking better, and I'm not going to push it down because I don't want to risk this flying up and off and my balls going everywhere. That's going to be a disaster. So let's throw the cover on and see what happens this time. Alright, my future's looking brighter here. So up seems to stick. Down functions. And I'll get this silly cover out of the way here. And if you remember before, I had a lot of play in this spool. It looks nice and tight now. Well, obviously the handle's loose, but I'm talking the spool itself. It was kind of going up and down a little bit. So I'm thinking that's a good sign. I still got to tighten the top piece. I can't find my Allen wrench, so let's see if we can do that, and then we'll test it out. Alright, we're getting close. Remember, tighten this guy up. You'll be upset if you don't. I'll fluid everywhere. Okay, those are tightened back up. That's tightened back up. I added some of my fluid back in. Ended up draining some into the container. I think I showed that earlier on in the video. So I'm going to start it up, purge some of the air, and hopefully it works, because I got to go to work. Well, I'm going to announce success on it. So it looks like it was just that that loose connection up in there. So awesome, I'm thrilled. Didn't have to spend a penny. The only thing that I'm out is my Allen wrench. Cannot find it. So it's got to be out here somewhere, or I hauled it off and put it somewhere, like up on that stack of wood. I do dumb stuff like that all the time. Well, anyways, this is my first video. Apologize for doing this in the top format, not widescreen. My first video on YouTube, so I figured I should give something back to the community. If you find it useful, give me a thumbs up. If not, well, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. But be nice, please. So, thanks for watching.